Hey, you got those new sticky Dunlops on.
Yeah, they're supposed to be pretty cool.
They as sticky as they say?
That's why I got them. Truth is, I just don't know.
Yeah, see what you mean.
You know, the bike's fast. It's way faster than I am. Let's see how these other guys are getting on. Let's check them out. Whoa.
Oh, whoa.
Now, this guy's brave. He can really lean it over.
Hey, look at those foot pegs all ground away.
Jeez.
And that tire. Gosh.
Can I help you gentlemen with something?
Is this your bike?
Yes, she is.
Hey, how do you do something like this with a bike like that?
I guess I learned a few things in my days.
Yeah, I guess so.
You got any advice for us?
Advice? It's a very interesting topic.
You brake straight up.
No way, pup. Trail brake. All the time.
No, bro, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to counter steer in the turns.
Just get more seat time. You'll improve.
No way. You got to plan out your laps. Be safe.
What you do is you downshift to slow down.
No. Use the brakes.
No, man, it's counter steering.
Body steering, man. It's body steering.
You got to be smooth.
One can hear a lot of advice about riding. Here. I started with this. Yeah. That's the Cornering Bible. Go ahead and read it for a week. And go ahead and bring it back to me.
Wow, thanks.
No problem. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks, you too.
You see you around.
Hi, I'm Keith Code. We hear lots of advice about how to ride. Some of it's destructive advice, some friendly advice, and some useful tips. Let's see how advice stacks up against the technology of riding.
Take how to steer as an example. Most often, our first vehicle had 3 wheels, like this tricycle. Turn the bars to the right, and it goes right. Turn to the left, and it goes left. Simple. Our first ventures out on 2 wheels usually involved training wheels. Now we have a 4-wheeler. From the tricycle experiences, we instinctively turn right to go right, and it works. In the time-honoured method of training, we raise the training wheels. Now we have a recipe for disaster. We've lost 2 wheels. It's now a frighteningly unstable machine. The child expects it to steer like everything else she's ridden. Look what happens, though. She steers to the right, and the bike tips over to the left, just like all 2-wheeled devices.
Just go for it.
Even with all the bad advice, out of our sense of survival, we somehow make it work.
She has never balanced
But do
yet.
we
Lower the training
understand
wheels. You'll kill
the
her.
underlying technology of it? All 2-wheeled vehicles steer differently to 3- and 4-wheelers. To go right, you apply pressure to the right handlebar. That action initiates the turn. The bike then leans over and the front wheel turns into the turn. It's called counter-steering. That's why training wheels are so confusing at first. It's counter to everything the child has learned.
Hey, good job.
Listen, kid, steering is simple. You just push down the inside peg, pull the bike in with your knee, push the handlebars down, and lean your body in.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It was false and misleading advice like that led me to invent the No BS or No Body Steering bike. Let's see if it will help us sort out the facts of steering. I've grafted an extra set of bars on this bike. The whole idea was to take the handlebars out of the equation to discover what so-called body steering really does. The extra throttle on the top bars allows the rider to maintain his speed.
Even with massive shifts in body weight without any input through the handlebars, the bike only vaguely changes direction. This would never get you through the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. Foot peg weighting is another myth. Even with his entire body weight on one peg, this bike merely veers off course, and once his course is set, the pressure has even less effect. Good advice doesn't always put the rider in real control and can prevent us from properly being able to do this. A little counter-steering with bar pressure gets the job done and puts the rider in control.
Here, we have mounted a simple pointer on the tank to illustrate countersteering. Let's take it for a ride and see what happens.
See how the pointer shows the bars moving first to the left and then right, and vice versa? This is counter-steering. It's the only way to accurately steer a motorcycle. It really is simple. Just press on the bar and the bike responds instantly. That's all you do, and it works all the time, every time, even with only one finger. The idea that we lean to steer comes from the fact that when you lean right, you unconsciously pressure the right handlebar, and that counter-steers the bike right. Vice versa for left turns. Lean steering is one of the myths of riding. Some believe body steering works because they can maneuver the bike with their hands off the bars. When we move our weight around on the bike, it actually creates a counter-steering action. Look at the pointer. Some riders are confused about how they steer a bike once they are in a turn. It's exactly the same. To tighten the turn, you press your inside bar. To widen your turn and bring the bike up, you press the outside bar. Counter-steering always works.
Countersteering is a piece of riding tech that will help you to improve your control in virtually every situation. It's an agreed-upon fact. Our instinctive survival reactions, our SRs, ruin a rider's hopes of being confident and in control.
In riding, there are 8 distinct so-called survival reactions, or SRs, and we can see all of them in this one incident. Immediately, we see the rider trying to use body steering into the turn when he should have counter-steered, so he starts out a little wide. If you'd known how to steer the bike, this whole thing could have been avoided. Let's get back and see what other errors were made. He gets on the gas to stabilise the bike, but chops it mid-turn. The bike stands up a bit, and that's SR number 1, chopping the gas from panic. Now he's counter-leaning against the angle of the bike. This increases bike lean angle, but doesn't tighten up the turn as he had hoped. This is another SR. Now the bike is unstable and running wide, so he tightens his grip on the bars. Our most common SR. None of this helped. He's running wide and panics. He's looking everywhere but where he should be. Around the turn. This is visual panic. He target locks on the very thing he doesn't want to hit. An SR? You bet. In a panic, we go where we look. He's steering directly towards the log where his attention is locked. SR number 6. With his attention tunnelling down, he cannot steer effectively and becomes frozen on the bars. Yes, SR number 7. He can't turn, so he jumps on the brakes. Our 8th SR. His lazy steering started the whole mess, but when he chopped the throttle off, it got worse. First, let's take a look at throttle control and how it works. Considering that most machines in a static or constant speed situation have roughly 50-50 weight distribution, we can begin to calculate the guidelines for correct throttle control through a turn. The fact the rear contact patch is the larger of the two tells the story. Give me more weight, I can handle it. So, once in the corner, our task is to shift 10 to 20% more load to the rear to give it its fair share of load. This we do with the throttle. Technically speaking, we want a slight 0.1 5.2 Gs of acceleration to accomplish that. Simply put, in a straight line, it's the force generated by a smooth fifth gear roll-on in the 4,000 to 6,000 RPM range on pretty much anything over 600cc. That's not much acceleration, but it transfers the weight. Whatever the RPM range, we must maintain the weight transfer by continuing our throttle roll-on. Throttle control rule number 1. Once the throttle is cracked open, it is rolled on evenly, smoothly and continuously throughout the remainder of the... This rider is late on the gas and gets very hard sudden acceleration out of the turn. This rider is trying for good throttle control and has nice clean roll-on, not the same fierce acceleration as the first guy. But what is the actual result in exit speed? Let's look at the radar. A huge difference. There are two circumstances under which you may violate throttle control rule number 1. Let's take the point where you are bringing the bike up for the drive out of the corner as the first one. As the bike is brought up towards vertical, we can be more aggressive with the throttle. At some point, you can pin it.
Coordinating your throttle roll-on with bringing up the bike is how to maximize your drive off of any corner on any size bike.
Most riders wait until the bike is nearly upright before they increase the roll-on rate. The skill of it is in accurate timing of the pick-up and roll-on. What difference does it make? Quite a lot. The second exception to throttle control rule number 1 is traction control. Riders can be far more aggressive with mid-corner and exit throttle. Double apex turns are the other exception to the throttle control rule. Since you're actually dealing with two turns, it's okay to roll off or stop the roll-on between the two. Good handling means predictable traction, and good traction depends on your suspension working well. In mid-corner, on a properly set up bike, the forks and shock work best in roughly their mid-stroke range. With good throttle control, you can see the forks working in their mid-stroke in mid-corner. Is that as good as it gets? Is the bike happy? Are you happy when the bike is happy? Yes, yes, and yes.
In what range do we want the rear shock to operate? In the middle, of course. That's its most compliant range. That's its sweet spot, just like the forks.
Once you get back on the throttle, weight begins to transfer to the rear. The rear shock becomes our main concern because we must now rely on it more for stability and traction. Contrary to popular opinion, getting on the gas hard makes the back of the bike rise. That applies to both chain and shaft drive bikes. As it rises, the rear suspension becomes stiff. This results in the rear tyre not being able to follow the road's surface as well, and traction is reduced. This becomes abundantly clear when we look at front wheel speed compared to rear wheel speed on a straight. There is quite a bit of tyre slippage, and look at the rear suspension's position. Nearly topped out. Again, it isn't working well. With good throttle control, we get what the bike is designed to deliver: working suspension and optimum traction. Another downside of survival reaction number 1, chopping the throttle, is reduced ground clearance. Not only does the front compress, so does the rear, which further reduces your clearance. Riders are often confused about why the bike initially stands up and runs wide when they get off the gas mid-turn. Once into your lean and the gas is rolled off, weight transfers to the front of the bike, compressing the forks. That weight goes to the front tyre and spreads out the contact patch. This creates additional drag on the patch to the inside of the centre line of the bike. That drag countersteers the bike upwards and it runs wide. The whole thing can seem confusing, especially as the rider expects to tighten the turn when he rolls off the gas, and he finds the opposite of that happening. A moment later, since the gas is off, the bike slows, leans further over, and finally tightens up the turn. Applying brakes mid-corner creates the same effect. When the weight transfers forward, the result is the same. The bike stands up. Why are the bars moving? What are they searching for? They're trying to find a position that will stabilise the bike by maintaining the correct tracking of front and rear wheels. The bike does this without any help from the rider. If the rider could hold on tight enough to stop the bars moving, he would only amplify that wobble. The force he puts into the bars creates resistance and a ploughing effect at the front tyre's contact patch. Now the back of the bike wants to rotate around that resistance and the wobble becomes even worse. Like most avid cornering enthusiasts, you've tried to hang off. There are several key elements we'll cover on this. First, when do you hang off? One of the more common beginner errors is moving over into a hang-off position right at the turning point. Notice the bike wiggling? The rule of thumb is to pre-position your hips just before you roll off the gas. This method will reduce problems from unwanted handlebar and body inputs. The second novice knee-jogger error is hanging off too far. Enough is helpful, too much is awkward and does more harm than good. Notice how stiff the rider is when off too far. One cheek off the seat is enough. These two simple rules will get you started. Hang off early and not too far. To make this possible, how do you become efficient with your steering? What works and what doesn't work? The plane of rotation of the bars looks like this. At a steep angle like this, half your input into the bars goes straight down and is a total waste of energy. At this angle, you're still only 75% efficient. Here, your input is in line with bar rotation and is 100% efficient. This is another great example of how understanding the technology puts you in full control.